Complete trash. Sugar-free gelato. Not bad. Trash. I expected worse. Trash. The question of today is, can you make a real sugar-free gelato or ice cream? Welcome to this new video of the Gelato.expert Academy. I'm Luca Musolesi, and today I want to make a gelato that is completely sugar-free. We often see food bloggers or even gelato makers and ingredient companies advertising sugar-free products, but the reality is that usually they are not without sugars, but they are, at the very best, with no added sugars. And the difference is very important because these claims are actually defined by laws. That if you sell food, you obviously have to obey. So let's see what is the definition of sugar-free according to the European legislation. And if you are in the US, it's pretty much the same. And in the rest of the world, local legislations are very similar to the ones in EU or the US. According to the European legislation, a food product can only be labeled as sugar-free if it contains less than 0.5 grams of sugar per 100 grams or 100 milliliters. Without added sugars, on the other hand, means that no sugar or sugar-containing ingredient is used with a sweetening purpose during the production process. However, this does not mean that the final product is completely without sugars, as some ingredients may naturally contain sugars, and in this case we are obliged to add on the label the sentence "it may contain naturally occurring sugars." If you want to learn more about the legislation and how to formulate recipes with no added sugar or with alternative sweeteners, check out our course on gelato without sugars in the Gelato.expert Academy. You will find the link in the description. But today we want to follow the most restricting case of the sugar-free claim. This means we have to be very mindful when selecting the ingredients to use because our final maximum sugar content of naturally occurring sugars cannot exceed 0.5%. So we need to understand which ingredients we can use and which ones we can't. We can use ingredients that have no sugar or extremely low sugar content. For example, we can use vegetable fats like coconut oil. We can use sugar alcohols like xylitol, maltitol, erythritol. We can use cocoa powder. We can use some aromas like vanilla or cinnamon, or even fresh herbs like mint or basil. In terms of dairy products, we could use ultra-filtered milk or protein isolates. However, for this test, let's just avoid using dairy products and make a plant-based version. Obviously, among the ingredients we cannot use, there are all the fruit, but also nuts unless it's in very low quantity, and any other ingredient that contain some sensible amount of sugars. Because remember that we need to stay below 0.5% of sugars in the final product, which is very, very low. For example, using 10% of milk could already bring too much sugars to the final recipe. So now let's have a look at a possible formulation of a gelato or ice cream based on chocolate or better on cocoa powder that is sugar-free. So let's see the ingredients that we can use. Of course, we can use water. Water doesn't contain any sugar. And as a main source of fat, we can use coconut oil. Coconut oil doesn't contain any sugars, so it's 100% fat, and we can use it without problems. Then, for sweeteners and to decrease the freezing point and bring solids, we will use 2 sugar alcohols. We could use different ones, of course, but for this test, let's just use the 2 that have the best flavor, the most resemblant flavor to sucrose, and have the highest sweetness, so maltitol and xylitol. Then we will use, to give the flavor, cocoa powder. And finally we will add some fibers. Here we are using a fiber syrup that contains very little sugars, but for example we can also substitute it with inulin that also contains a little amount of sugars. Of course, we have to check the technical sheets if the amount of sugar contained in the fiber that we are using is low enough to stay within our parameters. Finally, we use a stabilizer for gelato, that it's best if it has emulsifiers, since we are mixing coconut oil and water and no other dairy or source of protein or something that can emulsify. And in terms of quantities, we will use a consistent amount of coconut oil to give the texture basically and the amount of solids that we need, so 10% of coconut oil, and a consistent amount also of cocoa powder to give a strong flavor and to give body to our gelato, so we use 8%. Of course, depending on the cocoa powder, we could use a little bit less, 7%, or even a little bit more, maybe 9%. Then we have around 4% of fibers and 5 grams of our stabilizer. Maltitol, xylitol, of course, we can vary their quantities. Here we start with 10% and 8%. So now let's mix all the ingredients, heat them, of course, and then freeze them and see how this sugar-free gelato tastes. We have now prepared our sugar-free gelato, and it's just time to taste the result and see if it's any good or if it's complete trash. Here I have my sugar-free gelato that has been blast chilled and then stored for 24 hours, and it's now time to taste it. The texture is quite smooth, I have to say, and now I just have to taste it. Trash. Not that bad. Trash. It's actually pleasant. I expected worse. So after a few scoops, how is this product that is legally sugar-free? It's not bad at all. It's clearly not too sweet. It's fairly creamy thanks to the high content of fat and the moderate amount of fibers that we added, but also there's quite a bit of cocoa powder in it, so we have additional fibers. And I would say that is a decent product. Would you buy it twice if you eat it? I don't know, you should try. If you're used to eat with sugars, maybe this is not sweet enough. You could add some intensive sweetener like stevia or sucralose even, or if you're in a country where it's allowed, you could use monk fruit. But overall, it's a decent product if you really want to have something with no sugars at all. Remember that here we are below 0.5%. You can easily keep eating it, and the flavor doesn't get worse, actually it gets better probably, spoon after spoon. So I would say it's quite a good success, but take it for what it is. You cannot make many flavors like this, of course. If you want to formulate on your own recipes that are without sugars or without any added sugar, I suggest to check out our course on gelato with and without sugars in the Gelato.expert Academy, of which we will find the link in the description. And if you have other questions related to sugar-free products, just write in the comments and I will try to answer your questions or make new tests here in the lab. For now, that's all. See you in the next video.